Alright. Alright, I'm in it. Welcome back to more rantings and ravings from me. My mind works in funny ways when I'm trying to find things to talk about. So last night I had a dream about being back in a house at a party where it was sort of the last time I saw my ex, but my first girlfriend, back when I was much younger. I think about 17, back in high school, 17. First real girlfriend, I'll say, because I just had affairs before that. And I remember something which made me remember my last lingering memory of her, and it was something she said to me. And we always remember when we feel vexed. We remember when someone has done us wrong more than when they've done something nice for us. And I remember her saying to me, you know, Carl, you're quite boring. And I laughed at her when she said that to me, because she was a bookworm, total bookworm. And I'm a bit of a bookish, geekish guy too now. But she said to me, "Yeah, you're boring. Your life's a bit boring." And I laughed at her because just the week earlier I had been arrested for shoplifting, and that weekend she'd been at home studying. And all this had come just after I'd sort of gotten back to Australia after being thrown out of Europe. And then sort of this thought and this sort of personal vendetta I've had against what I perceive to be boring, sort of made me think, what is it to be interesting? I judge interest. I deem people interesting by what I find interesting, because they're interesting to me. Whereas it's clear that there's some things that I do and have done that bore the shit out of people. For example, my father has no interest in what I'm doing, and when we talk, I have to carry the conversation because he doesn't know what to say. He doesn't know what to ask. He wants to talk about sport and rugby and the things my brothers are doing. Like, one brother's a lifesaver, the other one's a tennis champion. He's 15 years old and he's already coaching tennis, and the other one's 16 and he saves lives just as a part-time job, while he's doing high school. And then there's me. I study politics and philosophy and history, live abroad, and my dad just can't relate at all. He thought it was the biggest waste of time ever, me going to university. So what is interesting? What interests me? Well, for me, I'm interested by people who travel, people who've been to interesting places. For example, I fell head over heels for one girl who had spent 8 months doing this, just teaching English, but in Cambodia, like in some little jungle village. That was awesome. I thought she was really cool. And then there was another girl I met on a plane, and we had a very short and fiery 6-hour relationship, just because we met between destinations. The whole thing unfolded in an airport and on an aeroplane, and she was just awesome. She was travelling. She'd just spent 6 months in the Middle East with an aid organisation in Jordan. Had travelled around the south of Lebanon, hanging out with Hezbollah people, and then she was on her way to Morocco to study Arabic. And I find all this very interesting. And I've met perfectly lovely people who have spent their entire life in the one little village, and I don't know what to say to them. Don't know what to say to them. There's a whole world out there that people have to explore. And I know I'm not alone in this sentiment. I know I'm not alone here. Like, I've met people, like, back home. One of my best friends back home, he looked at me one day. He says, "How do you have all these stories?" I'm like, "What stories?" He said, you've been here, you've done this, you've done that, you got deported when you were 16 years old. And I sort of never thought about it. And I've never thought about how I get myself into these situations that later turn out to be good stories. I guess I just do stupid things, really. I'm impulsive. You know, in Israel, a soldier, a soldier coming back from the barracks for the weekend. He fell asleep on my shoulder, and he had his rifle across the two of us. And I had this thought, like, I should take this gun and pose for a photo with it. But when he felt me trying to, like, remove the gun, sort of slide the gun across to me, he woke up and gave me a funny look. And when I was in Petra, in Jordan, me and a Spanish guy, we sort of climbed up the side of the canyon using this old goat trail. And we got to the top of one of the monuments. Huge, huge thing carved out of the side of the cliff. It wasn't the treasury that everyone knows from pictures. It was something up on top of a mountain. We've got up there, and you've got this view of like the mosque where Muhammad's brother was is like interred, and it's like just straight cliff downwards, and we're up on top of this monument. You've got tourist police down there, like this tiny speck of a tourist policeman waving at us and shouting at us to get down. And I looked at the Spanish fella and thought, well, this is great. This is going to make a really cool story one day. And it took us an hour to get down. We only nearly died a couple of times. But like, why? Why would I do that? Why would I think it was a good idea to climb this thing? And that was it, just because this will be a cool story. And so I've applied for a teaching position in Moscow. I didn't expect them to reply, but they did just this morning, asking for more information. And I'm sitting thinking, why did I do that? Do I want to go to Moscow? No, not really. Do I want, will I learn Russian over there? No, I'm not clever enough to learn Russian. So why did I do it? Well, because if I get the job, I'll take it. Not because it will make me happy, but just because it'll be a good fucking story. What did you do then? Oh yeah, I went to Moscow. How long were you there? About a year teaching. I don't know. I think that's interesting. And God, the trouble I get into. Shit, like, I had 3 hours to catch a plane out of Seoul, but I had thought it would be a good idea to go hiking for the day. And then just the evening before that, I'd been drinking at the bar at the hotel, and I put the moves on a girl who turned out to be a Miss World contestant. Not going to say any more about it, but how was I supposed to know? Like, I don't plan this stuff. It just happens. Didn't go anywhere. I'm not bragging. She politely shot me down. That's about it. I've got a lot of incidents I can tell, but they're all like disconnected and disjointed, and they're spread out all across the place. All across the place. But for me, I don't tell them as stories because I don't think I'm a storyteller. I just find myself in interesting situations. God, and another guy, he's done it to me too. He said, Kyle, how do you keep... I want to do things like you. I need, like, experience. I'm like, what do you mean experience? He said, yeah, you're like, when you were young, you got deported, and then I know this other guy, he grew up in Kosovo, watched his parents getting killed during the war, and now he's here doing this and this. I'm like, does he hear himself when he speaks? Like, he wants to be able to relate to a fellow who watched his dad and uncle get killed in the, in a war in Kosovo, and then I don't think people grasp, like, how messed up I was after I got kicked out of Europe. For a good story, there's got to be a certain amount of misfortune to get you there. So I climbed a few UNESCO monuments in Jordan, but I got into trouble for it. And I came out of it with a few cuts and bruises. So yeah, what is interesting for me? For me, travel. Traveling's interesting. The world is interesting. That's why I love doing what I'm doing and getting to meet other travellers, because they've got cool stories. And every time I meet someone who's done something I find interesting, I'm like, I'm gonna do that. It's not one-upmanship. It's more about proving to myself I can be as interesting as that person. And so there, but by the grace of God go I, and find myself in Ouazzazate in the Sahara, being forced to buy things because I've been dragged into a souk by guys with making no effort to conceal the fact they've got a gun sitting next to them. And I'll leave it at that. Have a good week.